Hey everybody, welcome back to Intrepid Exotics. So today what we're going to be talking about is substrates, and I have seen a couple comments come across here recently wondering what the best kind of substrates are for your snakes, whether it be Aspen or cypress mulch or soil, reptichip, paper. There's a whole myriad of things that we can use, and I think there's kind of a time and a place for everyone, kind of depending on the humidity requirements of the snake and how big they are, what type of enclosure they're in, and so forth. So that's what we're going to talk about. Okay guys, so as with a lot of things in the reptile keeping community, I think substrate's kind of subjective. We've all got a little different things that we do, little different reasons behind it. So I really wanted to throw this disclaimer out there that, you know, if I'm showing one of my animals, it's on paper or something, I am by no means trying to say that you're wrong for putting them on something else. The only thing I'm doing with this is just kind of adding my 2 cents, letting you know what I keep mine on and the reasons why I do it. I think we should all have some kind of a reason why we're doing something outside of the fact that it just looks cool in our enclosure. Because quite frankly, our snakes and our lizards, they don't care how cool the enclosure looks, they care how comfortable they are in it. And I think substrate decisions have a lot to do with how comfortable they are in their enclosures. So like I said, just my 2 cents, and I'm gonna go ahead and start right here with my big snakes. Now this right here is Tigger. He is my 15-foot, 60-pound male reticulated python, who's currently hanging out under his basking platform. And as you can see, I've got paper in his enclosure, got a nice big water receptacle in there. Same thing up here with my Burmese, who's a lot more active. And you know, oddly enough, we talk about how reticulated pythons tend to be a little bit more active and reactive and so forth than Burms, but my retic tends to be pretty chill. He's hanging out like this a lot of the time. And my Burm, you can see as soon as I come up here, he wants to know what's going on. So I keep my big snakes, not only these two right here, but my female reticulated python, she's on paper as well. And you can see she's getting ready to shed. It's one of the reasons why I keep a big water receptacle in there, is because they will definitely sit in here and soak for some periods of time. My female ball python and this little 4-footer right here, she's on newspaper as well. Now the reason why I ended up switching her over to paper is because I fed her one day and I sat down here for another 15-30 minutes or something like that, and I could see her mouth, you know, opening and closing, things like that. Looked like she was looked like she had something in it. So when I went over and looked, sure enough, she had like an inch and a half long sliver of wood that had gotten lodged all the way down here in the back and was just sticking out a little bit. So I had to take her out and get in there with the forceps and pull it out. Had I not been paying attention until the next day or something, you know, there's a chance that thing could have stayed in there, started cutting the inside of her mouth open, gotten infected. So as soon as I got that out, I went ahead and cleaned all the bedding out of her enclosure, put her down on paper, and she's perfectly fine. And also, don't forget, if you guys like talking about reptiles as much as I do, if you're getting something out of these videos, smash the like button. Get down here in one of these corners right here is a little square box. It says subscribe. Just click it. Get on board.
Do it! Do it! Come on! Do it now!
Now, one of the reasons why I've got my large snakes on paper instead of using any kind of bedding with them is, I mean, I've seen entirely too many big snakes that like to push, and they get into that substrate, you know, maybe they get a drink of water and they get some of that stuff stuck in their mouth, and then they start rubbing and pushing, and that stuff will get pushed down into their gums, and you know, this stuff will sometimes get packed into their mouths and they'll start getting infections because of it, and it's just never a good situation. Now that's not to say that that's going to happen all the time. You know, if you're paying attention to your animals and you're doing everything you can to keep them from pushing and whatnot, you can mitigate that a lot. Some snakes are just going to push. That's their nature. And for me, I just find it so much better, so much more peace of mind for me I keep substrate out of it. I just lay newspapers down there and I keep up with the cleanings. You know, it's not going to absorb the mess and things like that, but I've got a really small collection here that's real easy to take care of. So when I come down here in the morning for coffee, if somebody has let loose and made a mess for me, I can set my coffee down, clean the enclosure real quick. It's a done deal. Don't have to worry about it. So me personally, for my big snakes, I want to keep them on paper. You know, you can talk about, you know, bioactive enclosures and things like that, but honestly, I think there's a bit of a misnomer to that, because, you know, if you say, well, a snake in its natural environment, it's out in the leaves and the sticks and the dirt and all this other stuff. Well, yeah, but they're also not in a box in their natural environment. You know, that piece of ground that they're on right now, that they're defecating on, urinating on, is behind them when they go off to the next spot. They don't have to live in it. You know, they've got this huge ecosystem out there, and we do our best sometimes to mimic those ecosystems, but it's never going to be spot on. I think it's just so much easier to try and mitigate the amount of bacteria that you've got to deal with them, reduce the risk of infections and so forth. I just find paper to be a lot better for them. My personal opinion. Now, I've seen, you know, other people that keep their big snakes on all kinds of bedding. Yeah, more power to you. If that works for you and you're not having any problems with it, you know, like I said, it's just my personal preferences and my reasoning behind it. I'm not saying that it's wrong to put them on anything. I'm just saying that this is why I do what I do. Now, the snakes that have got a little bit lower humidity requirements, I find Aspen bedding works really good on. A really good example of that is my Florida king snake that you can't see because she's in one of her holes. And you can see those come up close here. There's one of her holes. She's got them scattered all over the place. You can see these little tunnels on the side right here where she likes to run laps, and, you know, little spots where she just likes to burrow. Every now and then, if she doesn't want to be messed with, she just crawls down in her substrate and she's good to go. And, you know, they don't have the same humidity requirements as, say, a retic or a berm or a boa or anything like that. So this stuff works fine for them, because Aspen is really terrible for humidity. And it's definitely not something that we want to have our ball pythons or retics and stuff like that on. Corn snakes, king snakes, hognose. You can see my little hoggy down here. Got a little Arctic hognose who is as well in one of those holes somewhere, hiding, just relaxing. And I keep my big female hoggy on Aspen as well, and she does really good on it. And this gives me a good opportunity too. If you look at this tank right here, you can see the crack that runs along the side right here. There's a good lesson to be learned from that. There was a time that I used to have another rack right here before I put this tub in there for Niles, who's sitting there basking in the sun right now. But I had that rack there, and I had a habit of keeping my hose right there. I guess I better put this back up there. But I'd keep my hose hung up right there, and I came home from work one day. This hose had failed, and it had been shooting water into the enclosure below it all day long. And I was beside myself. As soon as I got home and I saw that, I thought for sure that snake was a goner. Fortunately, it was just unlevel enough so that the water was running out this end. There's a little bit of an air hole right here, so she was able to float up here and kept breathing. I got her out of there and got her warmed up, and as you can see, she's doing awesome right now. But one of the mishaps to be aware of. Fortunately, we didn't have any problems with the electrical. You know, there wasn't any shorts or anything like that, so that was a big plus. But her tank filled completely up with water. That enclosure is not built as an aquarium, so of course that water being in there cracked it, and it was really nasty. I wish it would have cracked it to the point where it let the water out, but yeah, fortunately she recovered and everybody's good now. So I thought I would just point that out really quick. You know, if you guys have got water hoses, things like that hanging close to your enclosures, you might want to move them. Freak things happen. I had no way of knowing that thing was getting ready to burst, and like I said, I just came home one day, and my snake was floating. Like I said, fortunately she's okay, but needless to say, the hose is now on the other side of the room. Just something to keep in mind. Now, another type of substrate that I use, my ball python here seems to be doing really good on it. I've got a mixture of cocoa husk and mulch in here, and he hasn't had any problems. A lot of times too, if I feed him, I may put it down on a tray or something just to kind of help keep everything clean, but I haven't seen him have any issues yet. And I think one of the reasons why it's maybe a little easier to have the substrate like this for the smaller animals is they're not quite so likely to push, really, as the big snakes are. You know, a lot less likely to, you know, injure themselves, things like that. So it's not too bad. And this is my little ghost ball python, who is always telescoping up. He would get out of this enclosure in a heartbeat and run around if I let him. He's a really cool snake. Now, another thing that you guys might want to consider too is I've got this piece of cork in here in my female retics enclosure, and that's just to help her shed. You know, it gives her a rough surface. You know, as you can see, she's sitting there soaking right now. It's not going to be too much longer. I'm going to come down here and she's going to be all shed out. But, you know, having stuff like stones or cork like this in there just kind of helps give them something else rough that they can kind of brush up against and help them shed a little bit easier. Okay, guys, so like I said, none of this stuff's carved in stone. You know, we've all got our personal preferences. Sometimes there's multiple right ways to do things, multiple wrong ways to do things. This is just the way I do it and why. So, give you a little something to think about. Don't forget, like, subscribe, get notified, and we will see you guys next time on Intrepid Exotics.